This is HOA violation vault. And yes, the tow truck really showed up. I am a park ranger who values quiet and rules that make sense, and at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in January, I woke up to the sound of a diesel engine idling in my driveway. I pulled on my red puffer jacket, grabbed my black knit cap, and stepped outside into the kind of cold that makes your lungs hurt, and that is when I saw the tow truck backing up to my car. The driver would not look at me. He just hooked the winch, dropped the bed, and when I asked him what the hell was happening, he handed me a slip of paper and said the HOA called it in. No warning, no ticket on my windshield, no knock on my door. Just gone. I stood there in the freezing wind holding a tow yard claim ticket with no readable text, just a barcode and a phone number, and I knew exactly who was behind this. Carol. Heather Lee, officially, but everyone in the villas at Glacier Point HOA Incorporated knew her as Carol, the treasurer who treated every rule like a personal mission and every neighbor like a suspect. She had been circling me for weeks, ever since I put down a heated driveway mat to melt the ice near my front door. The cord ran along the edge of my walkway, tucked against the house, but Carol called it a tripping hazard and said I was violating the winter safety addendum. I told her the mat was temporary and the cord was secured. She told me, "You do not shovel to my standard, you pay to my standard." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, she had shown up twice to measure my sidewalk snow clearance with a ruler, like she was investigating a crime scene. She walked the length of my property line with a clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve because of the snow, writing notes I was never allowed to see. The first time I asked her what she was documenting, she said, "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." The second time, I did not say a word. I just filmed her on my phone while she crouched in the snow, pressing her ruler against the edge of my driveway and muttering about compliance margins. She saw the camera, stood up, and smiled. Then she left. Now my car was gone, and I had no idea what the violation even was. I called the tow yard. They told me the vehicle was impounded under an HOA enforcement contract, and I could retrieve it for $420, plus a daily storage fee starting immediately. I asked what the violation was. They said I had to talk to the HOA. I called the management company. Voicemail. I sent an email. Auto reply said they would respond within 3 business days. It was Wednesday morning by then, and I had to be at work by noon. I am a park ranger, and winter is busy because people do not know how to stay off frozen ponds, so I borrowed my neighbor's truck and drove to the district office, trying not to think about how much this was going to cost me. But I could not let it go. My driveway has a single narrow exit, and snow piles could trap me completely if the HOA decided to escalate. I live in Fargo, North Dakota, where winter is not a season, it is a siege, and the villas at Glacier Point HOA Incorporated runs the neighborhood like a military checkpoint. Every curb is painted, every driveway angle is regulated, every snow pile has to be stacked in a specific zone or you get fined. The HOA does not plow our streets, the city does. But the HOA enforces a separate set of rules about where you can put the snow once it has been pushed off the road. And if you guess wrong, you are on the list. I got home that night and found a notice taped to my front door. It was printed on HOA letterhead, signed by Carol in her capacity as treasurer, and it said my vehicle had been towed due to an unapproved driveway obstruction and a hazardous extension cord setup that violated community safety standards. The fine was $200, plus the tow and impound fees, plus a mandatory compliance inspection fee of $75. If I did not pay within 10 days, the amount would double and a lien would be filed against my property. If I wanted to dispute it, I could request a hearing, but the hearing fee was $150, non-refundable, and the next available date was 5 weeks out. I read it twice. Then I took a picture of it, front and back, and I sent it to my buddy Marcus, who rents a unit 2 blocks over and works as a tenant advocate for a nonprofit downtown. He called me 10 minutes later and said, "This is retaliation harassment, and you need to document everything." So I started. I went back through my phone and pulled every photo I had taken of Carol measuring my driveway, every email I had sent to the management company, every text exchange with neighbors about the heated mat. I printed the notice and filed it in a folder. I requested a copy of the HOA meeting minutes where the winter safety rules were supposedly amended. The management company sent me a PDF 3 days later, but the section about driveway mats was blank, just a placeholder that said "see attached addendum," and there was no attachment. That was when I knew this was not about safety. This was about control. Carol had been treasurer for 6 years, and in that time, the HOA had switched management companies twice, hired and fired 4 different landscaping vendors, and racked up more than $60,000 in legal fees fighting homeowners over violations that were either imaginary or selectively enforced. She ran the board meetings like interrogations, and if you asked a question she did not like, she would write your address down on her clipboard and say, "Noted." I decided I was not paying the fine. I also decided I was going to get my car back without giving the tow yard a cent, because if this was retaliation, then the tow was illegal, and I was going to prove it. But first, I needed leverage. I needed something that would make Carol and the management company back off before this turned into a lien and a lawsuit I could not afford. I am trying to keep my home insurance stable, and the HOA is pushing me toward a claim, because if they file a lien, my insurer is going to see it as a risk flag, and my rates are going to spike. That is the real stakes here. Not the fines, the long-term financial trap. Marcus came over that weekend with a recorder and a legal pad. He said, "You need to bait her into admitting this is personal. Get her on record saying something that contradicts the official notice. Make her own words the evidence." I asked him how. He said, "Request a meeting with her directly. Do not go through the management company. She will not be able to resist showing up and flexing." So I sent Carol an email. I kept it polite and short. I said I wanted to discuss the tow and the driveway mat in person so we could resolve this without escalating to a formal hearing. I suggested meeting at my place the following Tuesday evening. She responded in 20 minutes. She said she would be there at 6, and she was bringing a compliance checklist. Tuesday came, and at exactly 6 o'clock, Carol walked up my driveway wearing her pink puffer coat and white knit hat, holding her clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve, and carrying a stack of chalk sticks she treats like official tools. She knocked once, hard, and when I opened the door, she did not say hello. She said, "We are doing this outside. I do not enter non-compliant properties." I stepped out onto the porch. She was already walking the perimeter of my driveway, dragging one of her chalk sticks along the edge of the snowbank and marking little X's every few feet. I asked her what she was doing. She said documenting the current state of your snow management for the file. I asked her what file. She said, "The enforcement file we opened when you refused to remove the tripping hazard." I asked her if she had any actual authority to be on my property marking things with chalk. She stood up and looked at me like I had just asked her if the sky was blue. She said, "I am the treasurer of this HOA, and under the enforcement bylaws, I have the right to conduct site inspections for compliance purposes. You signed the covenant when you bought this property. You agreed to this." I said, "I agreed to reasonable rules. I did not agree to you showing up unannounced with chalk and a ruler like you are investigating a murder." She smiled. She said, "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." That was the second time she had said it, and I knew Marcus was right. This was personal. So I stayed calm. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app, and I said, "Okay, let us talk about the tow. What was the specific violation that justified impounding my car without any warning?" She did not hesitate. She said, "Your vehicle was parked in a manner that obstructed emergency snow removal access, and the extension cord from your unapproved heating device created a tripping hazard that violated Section 12 of the Winter Addendum. I said, my car was parked in my own driveway, and the cord is against the wall. She said, the driveway exit angle is too narrow under snow load conditions, and the cord extends into the pedestrian clearance zone. I said, what pedestrian clearance zone? There is no sidewalk on this side of my driveway. She said, the zone is implied by the covenant. I let her keep talking. She told me the tow vendor was contracted through the management company, and they had full authority to remove vehicles that posed a safety risk. She told me the compliance inspection fee was mandatory because I had refused to cooperate during the initial site visit. She told me if I wanted to appeal, I could submit a written request, but the fee was non-refundable and the board decision was final. Then she said, you do not shovel to my standard, you pay to my standard, and she turned and walked back toward the street. I stood there with my phone still recording, and I realized she had just handed me everything I needed. She admitted the tow was based on an implied rule that did not exist in writing. She admitted the inspection fee was punitive. She admitted the whole thing was about enforcing her standard, not the HOA standard. I saved the recording, backed it up to 3 different places, and sent a copy to Marcus with a text that said, got it. But I did not have time to celebrate, because the next morning I woke up to find a new notice taped to my door. This one said the HOA had scheduled an emergency compliance patrol for that evening, and my property was flagged for a follow-up inspection. The notice said the patrol would occur after hours, and I did not need to be present. It also said if any new violations were found, additional fines would be assessed immediately. I called Marcus. He said, they are going to make stuff up. You need a witness. I said, who? He said, me. I will be there. That night, Marcus parked his truck a block away and walked over with a camera and a flashlight. We sat in my living room with the lights off and waited. At 8:30, 2 trucks pulled up. One was a white pickup with a magnetic sign on the door that said Villas Compliance Services. The other was Carol's personal SUV. She got out first, holding her clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve, and a man in a reflective vest got out of the pickup, holding a tape measure and a flashlight. They walked the perimeter of my property for 20 minutes. Carol pointed at things and the man wrote them down. They measured the distance from my front door to the curb. They measured the width of my driveway. They took photos of my snow pile, my mailbox, my porch light, and the heated driveway mat. At one point, Carol crouched down next to a reflective triangle marker set near the wheel of my neighbor's car and moved it 6 inches closer to my property line. Then she took a photo of it like it had always been there. Marcus filmed the whole thing through the window. When they left, he said, that is fabrication of evidence. You need to file a complaint with the management company and CC the entire board. I said, the board is 3 people, and Carol controls 2 of them. He said, then you go over their heads. You file with the state HOA ombudsman, and you request an external audit. I did not know there was an HOA ombudsman, but Marcus pulled up the form on his phone and we filled it out right there. I attached the recording of Carol admitting the rules were implied, the photos of the after-hours patrol, and Marcus's video of her moving the triangle marker. I hit submit at 11 that night, and the confirmation email said I would hear back within 15 business days. 15 days. I did not have 15 days. The lien deadline was 8 days away, and I still had not gotten my car back. So the next morning, I drove to the tow yard in Marcus's truck and I asked to speak to the manager. They made me wait 40 minutes, but eventually a guy in a stained hoodie came out and said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to see the impound authorization." He said, "We do not give that out." I said, "I am the vehicle owner, and under state law I have a right to review the document that authorized the tow." He sighed, went into the back, and came out with a single-page form. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe because HOA chaos season is just getting started. The form had Carol's signature at the bottom. It had the management company logo at the top. But in the middle, where it was supposed to list the specific violation and the covenant section number, someone had just written, emergency safety removal, dash, refer to board. No details, no section reference. Just a blank authorization with a signature. I took a photo of it. Then I said, this does not meet the legal standard for impound. You are holding my car based on a document that does not cite a violation. The manager said, take it up with the HOA. I said, I am taking it up with you, because you are the one holding my property illegally. He said, we have a contract with the HOA. If they say tow, we tow. I said, and if they are lying to you? He said, not my problem. And he walked away. So I called a lawyer. I could not afford a retainer, but I paid for a 1-hour consult, and the guy told me what I already knew. He said the tow was shaky, the fine was unenforceable, and the lien threat was probably a bluff, but fighting it would cost me more than just paying the fees. He said, you could file a small claims case, but that is 3 months minimum, and there is no guarantee you win. He said, your best bet is to settle with the HOA and get them to drop the fines in exchange for you agreeing to remove the driveway mat. I thanked him and hung up. I was not settling, I was not removing the mat, and I was not letting Carol win. But I needed something bigger, something that would force the management company and the tow vendor to cut ties with the HOA and make Carol untouchable. I needed proof that this was not just one bad enforcement call. I needed proof that the whole system was rigged. That is when I remembered something Marcus had said a few weeks earlier. He told me he had heard rumors that the management company was padding legal invoices and splitting the overage with board members. He said it was just gossip, but if it was true, it would explain why the HOA kept racking up legal fees even when there were no lawsuits. I asked him if he had any proof. He said no, but he knew someone who used to work in the management company office, and she might talk if I asked the right questions. Her name was Lynn. She lived 3 blocks over in a rental unit, and she had quit the management company 6 months earlier after a blow-up with the regional director. Marcus set up a meeting, and on Saturday afternoon I sat down with Lynn at a coffee shop downtown while the snow piled up outside. She did not waste time. She said, "What do you want to know?" I said, "Is the management company billing the HOA for legal work that never happened?" She nodded. She said, "They have been doing it for years. They bill for attorney consults that never happen, they bill for drafting letters that are never sent, and they bill for site inspections that are just the board president driving around looking for violations. The invoices go to the treasurer for approval, and the treasurer signs off without asking questions, because she is getting a cut." I said, "How do you know?" She said, "Because I processed the invoices. I saw the spreadsheet. They keep a target list of properties they want to squeeze, and they bill extra hours every time someone on the list pushes back. Your address was on there." I felt my stomach drop. I said, "Do you still have access to the spreadsheet?" She said no, but I took screenshots before I quit. I have not shown them to anyone because I did not want to get sued, but if you are willing to use them, I will send them to you. I said yes. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her photos, and airdropped me 6 images. Each one showed a different tab of the spreadsheet. One tab listed properties flagged for enforcement. One tab listed invoice line items with notes like compliance harassment push and legal intimidation retainer. One tab showed payments to Carol's personal LLC for consulting fees that had no description. And one tab, highlighted in yellow, showed my address with a note that said, "High resistance, escalate to tow and lien track." I stared at the screen and I thought, this is it. This is the trump card. I did not say anything out loud, because I knew if I told anyone what I had, Carol would find out, and she would destroy the evidence, or claim it was fake. So I stayed polite, because polite makes bullies careless, and I let Carol think she was winning. The next Monday, I got a letter from the management company. It said the lien filing deadline had been extended by 2 weeks as a courtesy, but the fines were now accruing interest at 5% per month, compounded daily. It also said the board had voted to suspend my access to the community amenities, including the snow removal request portal, until all outstanding balances were paid in full. I did not even know we had a snow removal request portal. I had been shoveling my own driveway the entire winter. I sent the letter to Marcus. He said, "They are trying to bury you in procedure, so you give up. Do not give up." I said, "I am not giving up. I am waiting for the right moment." That moment came 2 days later. Carol sent an email to the entire neighborhood announcing an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the rising cost of winter compliance and the need for stricter enforcement measures. The email said the meeting would be held at the management company office, and all homeowners were encouraged to attend. It also said the board would be voting on a proposal to increase the monthly HOA dues by $30 to cover expanded legal and towing services. I read the email twice, and then I forwarded it to every homeowner I had contact info for with a single line. If you are tired of being treated like a suspect in your own neighborhood, show up and ask questions. I attached the screenshots Lynn had given me, plus the recording of Carol admitting the rules were implied, plus the photos of the after-hours patrol and the fabricated triangle marker setup. I wrote, "This is what your dues are paying for. This is who is running your HOA." I hit send at 9 in the morning. By noon, my phone was blowing up. People I had never spoken to were texting me asking if the screenshots were real. Neighbors I barely knew were forwarding the email chain to other neighbors. Someone started a group chat called Villas Accountability and added 40 people. Someone else posted the spreadsheet on the neighborhood Facebook page. Within 6 hours, the management company took down their website, and Carol stopped answering her phone. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday night at 7. I showed up at 6:30 with Marcus and Lynn. The management company lobby was packed. There were at least 60 people crammed into a waiting area designed for maybe 20, and more were standing outside in the cold. Carol was sitting at a folding table near the back with the other 2 board members, and she looked like she had not slept in days. Her pink puffer coat was wrinkled. Her clipboard was on the table in front of her, but she was not writing anything. She was just staring at the door like she was waiting for security to show up and clear the room. The regional manager from the management company tried to start the meeting, but people started shouting questions before he could even introduce himself. Someone yelled, "Why are we being billed for legal fees when there are no lawsuits?" Someone else yelled, "Why is the treasurer getting paid by a vendor?" A woman in the front row held up a printed copy of the spreadsheet and said, "My address is on this list, and I want to know why." Carol stood up and tried to speak, but the room was too loud. She banged her hand on the table and said, "This is not how meetings are conducted. We have an agenda." People laughed. Someone yelled, "Your agenda is robbing us." Carol's face went red. She said, "You do not shovel to my standard. You pay to my standard." And the room went silent. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording I had made on my driveway, and played it on speaker. Carol's voice came through clear and sharp. "Your vehicle was parked in a manner that obstructed emergency snow removal access, and the extension cord from your unapproved heating device created a tripping hazard that violated Section 12 of the Winter Addendum." Then my voice, "What pedestrian clearance zone?" "There is no sidewalk on this side of my driveway." Then Carol again, "The zone is implied by the covenant." The room exploded. People were yelling over each other. Someone shouted, "You made it up." Someone else shouted, "You towed his car for nothing." Carol tried to interrupt, but I was not done. I pulled up the invoice photo from the tow yard, the one that just said emergency safety removal with no violation listed, and I held it up. I said, "This is the document that authorized the tow. No section number, no rule reference, just a blank form with Carol's signature." Then Marcus stood up and said, "And this is the video of Carol fabricating evidence during an after-hours inspection." He played the clip on his phone. The room watched Carol crouch down, move the triangle marker, and take a photo. When it ended, someone in the back said, "That is fraud." Carol tried to leave. She grabbed her clipboard and pushed her chair back, but the crowd was blocking the door. She turned to the regional manager and said, "I am not answering questions without legal counsel." The manager said, "You are suspended from the board effective immediately pending an external investigation." Carol said, "You do not have the authority to suspend me." The manager said, "I just did." Then he turned to the room and said, "This meeting is over. Anyone who wants to file a formal complaint can submit it in writing, and we will forward it to the state ombudsman." People started filing out, but a few stayed to talk to me. One of them was a woman named Jen who lived 2 streets over. She said, "This happened to me too. They towed my car last winter for parking too close to the curb during a snowstorm, and I paid the fine because I did not know I could fight it." She said, "I want my money back." I told her to get in touch with Lynn and Marcus, and we would figure out how to file a class complaint. Then I walked outside into the cold night air and I felt lighter than I had in weeks. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the tow yard manager. It said, "We have reviewed your case and determined the impound was not properly authorized. Your vehicle is available for release at no charge, and all associated fees have been waived. We are terminating our contract with the Villas at Glacier Point HOA effective immediately." I drove to the tow yard that night and picked up my car. The manager handed me the keys and said, "For what it is worth, we did not know they were running a scam." I said, "You should have asked more questions before you impounded someone's car in the middle of the night." He did not argue. Over the next 2 weeks, everything unraveled. The state ombudsman opened an investigation into the HOA finances and the management company billing practices. The management company fired the regional manager and sent a letter to every homeowner offering a settlement that includes refunds and limits on enforcement. Carol was stripped of access to the portal admin tools and removed from the board entirely. The other 2 board members resigned. An interim board was appointed by the ombudsman, and they immediately suspended all enforcement actions pending a full audit of the covenant rules. The audit took 6 weeks, and when it was done, the interim board released a report. It found that more than 40% of the fines issued over the past 3 years were based on rules that either did not exist in the covenant or were selectively enforced without proper notice. It found that Carol had approved more than $80,000 in legal and vendor invoices that could not be tied to any actual work performed. And it found that the management company had maintained a target list of properties flagged for aggressive enforcement, with my address at the top. The HOA agreed to mediation with a neutral third party, and we reached a settlement. Every homeowner who had been fined under the fabricated winter rules got a full refund. The tow vendor refunded every charge from the crackdown. The management company agreed to a new contract with independent oversight and a ban on after-hours inspections. And the board voted to remove the entire winter addendum and replace it with a simple snow removal guideline that actually matched the city code. I got a check for $740. Jen got a check for $400. 12 other homeowners got refunds ranging from $50 to over $1,000. The total payout was more than $18,000, and every cent of it came out of the management company reserve fund, not our dues. Carol did not fight it. She did not show up to the mediation. She did not send a lawyer. She just disappeared. Someone said she moved to a condo in Moorhead. Someone else said she was facing a civil lawsuit from the management company for breach of fiduciary duty. I did not care. She was gone, and that was enough. The heated driveway mat is still on my porch. I still use it every morning when I leave for work. No one has said a word. The interim board sent a letter to every homeowner saying they were prioritizing transparency and fairness, and if anyone had concerns about enforcement, they could attend the monthly meetings, which were now open to the public and recorded. I went to the first one. There were maybe 15 people there. No one yelled. No one brought a clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve. No one threatened anyone. It was boring and procedural, and exactly what an HOA meeting should be. Marcus told me I should run for the board. I told him I would rather shovel snow in a blizzard than sit through another HOA meeting. He laughed and said, "Fair enough." Lynn got a new job at a property management firm in Fargo that specializes in tenant rights. She said she is done working for HOAs. I do not blame her. I still see some of the neighbors from the accountability group. We have a group chat that is mostly quiet now, but every once in a while someone will post a photo of a ridiculous HOA notice from a friend's neighborhood, and we will all laugh. Jen started a blog about HOA abuse, and it has gotten pretty popular. She interviewed me for a post, and I told her the whole story. She titled it, "The Clipboard and the Spreadsheet," and it got shared a few thousand times. The tow yard manager sent me a formal apology letter 3 months after the settlement. He said they had implemented new policies requiring written verification of violations before accepting impound requests from HOAs. He said he wished he had pushed back sooner. I wrote him back and said, "Better late than never." I kept the tow yard claim ticket. It is in a frame on my wall now, right next to a printed copy of the spreadsheet with my address highlighted in yellow. I do not look at it every day, but when I do, I remember that staying polite and gathering proof is more powerful than yelling. I remember that bullies rely on people giving up, and I remember that sometimes the best revenge is just making sure everyone knows the truth. The reflective triangle marker set near the wheel is still sitting in my garage. I do not know why I kept it. Maybe because it is proof that Carol was willing to fabricate evidence just to win. Maybe because it reminds me that the fight was real and I did not imagine it. Or maybe because it is a good story to tell when people ask me why I hate HOAs. I do not hate HOAs anymore. I hate bad leadership. I hate people who use rules as weapons. I hate systems that let one person turn a neighborhood into a surveillance state. But I do not hate the idea of an HOA. I just think they need oversight, transparency, and consequences when they go too far. We got all three, and it cost Carol everything. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.